Are you sick and tired of doing barbell rows because of how ridiculously hard it is to touch your bar to the chest? Me too, dude. Me too. Luckily, there is another way. So let's talk about the ring row, or the inverted row, and why it just might be the best rowing variation for targeting shoulder retraction. It turns out that in rowing movements, when the shoulders are protracted and the arms straight, we tend to be strongest. As we row our hands towards our shoulders and our scapula retract, we get steadily weaker, and then as the elbows cross the torso and behind it, we become extremely weak. So the difference in strength between the bottom range of motion and the top range of motion is massive, much more than most other exercises. And I'd say it's one of the largest differences of all compound standard movement patterns. This is why if you've ever done a barbell or dumbbell bent over row, that as you get fatigued, it's extremely difficult to bring the bar all the way to your chest. This is one reason that most recommend higher rep ranges and lower weights for the bent over row, because when using very heavy weight, doing stripped repetitions is nearly impossible. Folks often overcome this by using lots of momentum and leg drive in order to move the bar up to the chest, and then they try to control the eccentric. This can be effective, but of course the strength curve on the eccentric is the same as it is on the concentric. It's still much harder at the top than it is on the bottom, so even if you're only doing eccentrics, you're still probably getting almost no stimulus at the bottom. The ring row, on the other hand, has a massive benefit that if you're anywhere between parallel and perpendicular to the ground, as long as your feet are fixed in space, then the angle between the direction of pulling and gravity of the ring row decreases as you move through the range of motion. This means that gravity is pulling most strongly when your arms are straight and your body is more parallel to the ground, which is exactly where you're strongest. Then, as you pull yourself up, the angle of pull from vertical decreases, reducing the effective load. So near the top of the range of motion, the resistance is the least. This allows you to just use your body weight while getting variable resistance, which is much closer to matching the strength curve of the rowing motion itself. We know from geometry that the force of gravity acting on your body, and thus determining the total load, is proportional to the cosine of the angle between your body and the ground. So what does all this nerd speak tell us? That if you want to accentuate the loading difference, the closer to vertical your body is, the better. If you want to reduce the loading difference, the closer to horizontal, the better. About 45 degrees is somewhere in between. This is why I'm not a big fan of progressing with this exercise much past 45 degrees, because it loses that strength curve mimicking effect. It's true that you can progress for a while by gradually going more and more towards horizontal in the ring row, but at some point you'll compromise the strength curve too much and not be able to complete full repetitions. So what do we do instead? Well, once you've reached the top of whatever rep range you're training for, a bit below 45 degrees, instead of progressing by continuing to go towards the ground, I would instead go much more vertical and start doing one-arm rows. This also allows a bit of a thoracic rotation, which can actually help you get the most out of your shoulder retraction. Most people can get by for a very long time training one-arm rows. Alternatively, you can add weight on your chest or torso, but this can be a bit awkward to set up using like a dip belt, but then laying the weight on your legs. So personally, I use rows to work my retraction, but for rigorous progressive overload, pull-ups and chin-ups are still the king. Why do we care about the strength curve in the first place? Well, using full range of motion tends to be more effective at stimulating muscles for strength and hypertrophy. Also, using a full range of motion makes you stronger throughout the full range of motion, and so it's just more useful if you want to be generally stronger and more practiced at a given movement. For the row, it's doubly useful because rows are the best exercise to practice and teach shoulder retraction. Shoulder retraction is important for posture, especially in our era of sitting and slouching, and if you do a lot of pushing, then you probably don't do enough retraction to counter that out. And you can only maximally retract when your elbows are flexed behind you, like in the top of a row. So try out the ring row to level up your retraction and general pulling strength. Take care, train hard, and have a great day.